Okay. Alright. I think we are live. But that lighting is way too harsh. Let's see if we can fix that real quick while people filter in the chat. Close enough for me. Then let's see if we can get speech chat going here for everybody. Oh, there's my head, very close. Okay, we should be good to go, and the stream should be fully live, etc. Let's get this party started by finding a wrench so I can turn this so we can see this exhaust manifold. Much better, I think. Yeah, now you can actually kind of see the engine thanks to the lighting not being total butts anymore. I'll shove it over here for a second and take a seat from the camera. It's a bit of a mess over here. I've not been doing a very good job of keeping everything clean past couple weeks. I'm sure some of you saw the last live stream where we were taking apart some things on V2 on stream. You know, gotta be all the way back here for me to be on camera. Fantastic. So last you guys probably saw was us taking the dash out of V2 and some of the front bumper stuff, which is all done now. The front bumper is off. Most of the engine bay wiring is out of the engine bay. It's not out of the car yet. We took the fender off though, so it's just dangling over here behind me. Actually, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So just give a quick pan over here. Ta-da! One magical pan later. So yeah, you guys can probably see this is pretty empty now. A couple brake lines left to pull, steering rack. This bottom corner plastic stuff, everything from like the frame rails up is out. Over here on the floor, most of my wiring harness. Ta-da! So now I can get this emptied out fully so we can start getting the core support mod done. We also took out the dashboard, which is over there. I'm not going to pan over there because it's a mess. But right, you see the end of it? Oh, not quite. There's the dashboard. I have a lot of wiring to redo and undo in the car from stuff I modified in the past. We'll get to that in a future episode or a future live stream. But today, as our beautiful thumbnail suggested, we are going to be talking about turbos, and we're going to be talking about hardware stuff, as in like the entire engine hardware, not just bolts and nuts. Because our last live stream, we focused on some tuning stuff. I kind of went through and showed you guys my basic plans for the wiring harness and the ECU running, and my plans on how to really make this wiring harness look nice, run nice, make it removable, editable somewhat, and add all the features I want in one go. Basically, I'm going to future-proof this thing when I'm building this harness. I don't want to do this twice. Now, following that stream, if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend going back and watching it. And if you have not seen it, I think it's like my third video ever, called Turbo Time, a long time ago, where we talked about B6T turbos a little bit. I would recommend going back and watching that because I could use a few hours, and it's very informative and maybe shot a bit better than the live stream is. Nonetheless, we're going to rock out today on this thing. So it is almost 9 Eastern time over here, middle of nowhere on Wednesday, so thank you all for joining me such an odd time. But I have work to do, and I figured I might as well do it on the stream, and we can talk about it. Because a lot of the stuff I'm doing today is related to a much bigger project where I'm trying to design and produce a bunch of awesome new products for either general B6Ts, so all the Capri people and the 333 people out there that want to modify theirs, or even potentially some Miata applications, but specifically a lot of stuff to support Festivas that are B6T swapped. So I've made a lot of progress on design work for some really cool new parts that are to make either a whole lot easier, a whole lot better, or a whole lot faster for anybody trying to do a swap like this. So if you have any interest at all in a B6T swap, this is the video for you. You're going to want to see some of these sweet objects. Before you go spend a bunch of money on eBay, a lot of stuff we're doing today, I'm going to be making release general public, either parts or write-ups or guides, etc. Starting right away with this right here, it's the little teaser, the bait on the thumbnail to get you all to click it. When I said, is bigger always better? Spoiler alert, no, it's not. Bigger is not always better. You don't want to have too big of a turbo when you're doing a B6T, but you do almost always want to upgrade from the stock turbo. The stock B6T turbo, let's go back a bit and talk about the stock setup here. So a stock B6T has a VJ14 turbo, so it's an IHI VJ14. It's tiny, it's old, it's outdated, and it's hard to get parts for. Back in the day, back in the 80s, when that turbo was like invented and used on cars, it was a great size, very streetable, great daily application. You know, it got your B6T to 130 horsepower, no problem. If you turn up the boost to like 12 psi, you could safely hit 160 horsepower, stock ECU, stock tune, all that jazz, no problem. However, they're journal bearing, which means they're not very reliable. As they age, they wear out, and VJ14s can wear a ton and still function. I've seen some wildly worn out VJs in my time. So typically we want to upgrade to a more modern turbo, and for years that has been the GT2554 or the GT2554R, which is a Garrett T25 series turbo, and it's like the perfect size for a B6T. It flows way better than the stock turbo. It is way more efficient. It's still nice and compact.
Cobbler said, "What's good?"
Boost is good, brother. Boost is good. Yeah, 2554 is way more compact, or not smaller than the stock one, but very compact, high flow, high efficiency turbo. We're talking like you can get 200 horsepower from 10 psi instead of getting 160 from 12 psi. They fit really well. They're fairly easy to find used. It was used OEM by the Mazda Speed Protege, used OEM in tons of Nissan SR20s, so like the S13 series, SR20 DET, all those use stock. Still easy to get aftermarket to this day, and they are ball bearing turbo. So they have 2 ball bearings. They are very well supported. They last much longer. And if you were to need to rebuild one, they are still rebuildable. You can still get cores and like turbo shocks and still rebuild those, no problem. I have those here to compare, so we'll do a little show and tell, just so that everybody can kind of see the sizes we're talking about. It's time for me to stand up for a while. Oh, it's heavy. So, here we have the stock turbo from this engine. So this is a factory B6T turbo, a VJ14. You can see how cute and tiny that little inlet is there. And then, time to do some curls over here on camera. Here's a 2554R from Mazda Speed Protege. So, if I get side by side here, you can see just how much more inlet the 2554 has, just how much more outlet it has. The hot side's a good bit bigger, but generally speaking, if I hold them side by side, they are pretty comparable turbo size overall. This, I'm going to put the stock one down for a second because it sucks. And talk about our typical upgrade again, so 2554R. This one's a little special because A, this is a used turbo from a Mazda Speed Protege, so it's already the correct clocking for a front-wheel drive car. So the inlet points up in towards the intake, the wastegate is internal, the wastegate actuator is far enough on the side to not interfere with the block, it's nice and flat back here. And this one is a little extra special because it has the outlet elbow imported from a Nissan Pulsar GTIR.
Said, boost. So this elbow is very nice. You have to find these overseas used from 30-year-old Nissans, which kind of sucks, but it's very nice because it's way more compact than the stock elbow you would find on a Mazda Speed Protege, which, funny enough, was made by Callaway, has Callaway stamped in it, but it's a big ugly shape. I'll pick it up for comparison. So this is a factory downpipe elbow from the Mazda Speed Protege. As you can see, it's kind of way bulkier, sits a lot lower, and uses a funky shaped flange that nobody makes like an aftermarket adapter for. Meanwhile, the Nissan flange is super compact, nice and tight, uses a pretty standardized 3-bolt flange. You can see here I've got a stainless flange from eBay already on it, ready to get welded up. It's a very nice piece. So, to fast forward to talking about too big, I mentioned this is almost the perfect size for a B6T and will easily get you to the 200 to 220 horsepower range. If you really want more than that, which I'm not recommending necessarily because after so many horsepower, so much tuning, more boosts not equal better. A 300 horsepower B6T with a big turbo that's laggy and makes boost way up top is going to be way harder to actually drive. You won't have that nice smooth torque curve that you would get from the smaller size turbos. That being said, pardon me, I mentioned 13 Slothy TM said, how long did it take to receive the shifter bushings?
If you mean that you ordered shifter bushings from the Festiva store and you're asking about how long they ship, we usually ship stuff about twice a week. So typically from the date you order it, it should ship between 2 to 6 days, just depending on what A, right now the order queue, and B, this is actually the first day we've been home in about 2 days for stuff that we've had going on elsewhere, which is why the stream is so late at night. But yes, if you have a pending order, it should be shipped out. Either it got shipped out yesterday or it will ship out tomorrow afternoonish. So I mentioned that the VJ Turbo sucks because it uses old ancient technology, and we are now getting to the point where the GT25 54, the one that we recommend, is also getting a little long in the tooth. I said earlier that you can get them from Mazda Speed Proteges. Those came out in 2002, so that's a 22-year-old turbo at this point. Garrett, in the meantime, has released this new series called the G25. It's their new small frame series, which is still big. Obviously, this is a lot bigger than that 2554 and much bigger than the stock turbo. I'll grab it again for reference here. This is the 2554 compared to the G25. And you guys can't see the inlet side, but it's massive. The inlet's huge on that G25. This one in particular is the G25 550, which is named such because it has enough flow to theoretically give you 550 horsepower on a large enough engine. That's not how much it's going to make on 1.6, but in theory it can flow enough to make 550. On this particular engine, this could probably net you 300 to 350 horsepower without breaking a sweat. This is like their super new modern series turbo. It's got a bunch of fancy features that they just came out with this last couple of years. So I recently thought I should try to get one and see if they would even physically fit on the dang motor. The answer is it doesn't quite fit.
So how we've been running these in the past, if you look closely here, you might see a little piece of steel that's got some rust on it. So this is the factory header, or not header, but this is the factory turbo exhaust manifold for B6T. The pattern it uses is kind of unique to the VJ series, which is silly. So to run
13 Sloppy TM said, I ordered November 30th and sorry for breaking off what you're saying too.
If it's from November 30th, it should have already shipped. I'll go check and make sure that it actually got exported to our shipping service then, because we actually use two programs, one to take orders that exports it to a second service that lets us print labels and actually get boxes. So I will check on that. Just go ahead and send an email to the store. If you go respond to your order email, or if you check on our website to contact us. If you already did today, then I will look at that tomorrow. Like I said, we've been gone for a while. I haven't checked the emails since Tuesday. So if you already have the email, that's good, and I'll look into it here in a little bit. So to run a 25 or any T25 based turbo, you have to run this little adapter. So that means you take the stock studs out from the manifold, you bolt this on, it moves new studs over, you bolt the turbo to that. All in an effort to make this better and easier and more modern, because we have a ton of wasted space in this area. The stock manifold, for Festivas, we have to keep the turbo pretty tight to the block because we don't have a ton of room between here and our radiator in front of it. However, we have plenty of room in this zone to make this flow better. The stock one does not flow bad, but you can tell already just from looking at it. It's only this tall. It's only 3 inches away from being a log manifold, which is not ideal. Instead, it'd be great if we could have a manifold that came out, a bit more flow to it, a bit more equal length, a bit more ram shaped, and then also have a factory T25 flange on it. And to that extent, I'm very happy to announce that Samet Industries is working on getting brand new, like OEM style cast manifolds that bolt directly to a front wheel drive B6T, the factory T25 flange that will support basically any T25 turbo from a 2554 all the way up to this G25, this big boy if you want it. So it's super exciting. We're having a company known for their turbo manifolds design it and help us get it made. So it's going to be like fully cast steel. We are looking at a T25 bolt pattern, so any T25 turbo up to this size will bolt directly to it. No modifications or brackets needed. We are probably going to be clocking the turbo slightly on the Z-axis so that our inlet points a bit away from the transmission, because right now this basically hits the transmission with how big it is. So we're going to clock that out a bit so we can maintain our spacing back. We'll also probably move it up and out just a tick. But this will be a fantastic upgrade option for anybody with a 323, anybody running a Capri XR2, and especially for people doing the swap for a Festiva. We're going to have a bolt-on OEM manifold, and that will also keep you from getting a cracked manifold. Because as many of you running B6Ts know, almost every single, like I'm talking 99% of all B6T manifolds are cracked. Usually not cracked enough to leak, but if you go look at yours closely, you will almost guarantee to see a crack down the gooch here, starting at the O2 sensor hole, going all the way up to the top, and through this little cross support. I don't know if my camera zoom is going to pick it up or not, because it's kind of small on this one, but we're going to try it for fun, since we have the ability to zoom with this camera. If I can remember how. Let's see if we can zoom in enough to see that crack. Almost. Maybe if I give it more light. Maybe. Oh, that's my head. Almost. You can almost see it right down there. But yeah, it's cracked all the way through. This one's not leaking any boost from that crack, but it is cracked, and they all are. So now, you're going to finally have an option, brand new, to have a bolt-on T25 turbo for your B6T. This is going to be awesome. I'm super excited for this. I think we're going to be doing a batch of like 15 or 20, so pay close attention on the Capri page, on the Festiva page, or on the Samet Industries page itself as we work on this and have updates. But I'm talking like we are fast tracking this project because I really want to have it done in time to build my own car. So we're looking at like Q1 of next year, like late winter, early spring of having these done and available. It's super exciting. I cannot wait for this. A labor of love to give the community an option to have a sick upgrade. And to help support that, I've also went ahead and got some new manifold studs. So I think today we're going to install those on stream real quick. I will start that process now, as in the assembly process to get the manifold off, and then talk to you guys about what sort of stud stuff we're looking at. Because I had 2 of the factory studs just pull out when I took the manifold off many years ago, and the rest of my studs have seen better days. Now, the factory studs are actually still available from Mazda, so I bought some of those like 2 years ago. This is a big pattern you'll notice as I talk about the V2 build here, where there's like parts that are not great, so then I went and bought better ones, and then it sat for like 4 years, and then I decided in that span of 4 years to upgrade it even further, and the goal keeps changing, so even though I already had a plan to replace these studs, now I decided I want to replace them with something even better, studs that can't rust or wear out. So I'm going to take off this massive turbo, give you guys also a peek at just how big this G25 is. Look at that.
Said, I installed the 3rd brake light from the TFS store. Wow, right.
Heck yeah, glad to hear it. If you guys haven't seen them, they are officially launched on the store, full LED 3rd brake light conversions. I had one out here to show off for show and tell, but I've sold enough now that I couldn't keep a spare to show off. I had to ship it to somebody because somebody bought it. But yeah, I'm glad to hear it. Super excited for those. So yeah, there's a big boy turbo. And you can see probably how rusty some of these studs are. So I found some SUS 304 studs. So they're nice fancy metal. And they are actually adapter studs, so they go from the factory M12 by 1.25 to a more common, well not necessarily more common, but a better for fancy nuts standard thread. So you can see it next down to standard thread size here, maybe, with these very nicely fully CNC'd 12-point nuts, extra fine thread. So these are going to never rust, they won't get all stuck, and they're going to look very nice on this engine. I already put 2 in for the 2 studs I pulled out. Now we just got to get the rest of them extracted. So I'm going to throw on some jam nuts and then try to take those off the impact. But if this looks boring, don't leave, stick around, because I'm not done talking about all the sweet new products that are coming out. That's right. This doesn't end here. We've got so many cool things coming to the store in preparation for this build. You guys are going to love it. As soon as I see, there it is. We're going to drop the impact. Headphone warning, by the way. Aluminum head, so this shouldn't take too long. Pull on studs from aluminum. I'm not balding too much. The light's probably making it look like a ball. I'll be staring at the back of my head here for a minute. Yeah, see, these threads are kind of gross, just from rust. And I had this whole head hot tanked back in the day, and I cleaned up a lot of the rust by hand. Then found, like I said, I found the replacement stock studs. Thought that'd be good enough, and I decided it wasn't. So here we are. I wish I had some non-flange nuts for once. Feels weird to say. I'm a big fan of flanges.
W said, waving hand hello.
Hello, hello, and welcome. Very late night stream. Well, I guess not that late. Late-ish. Later than normal for us, for sure. See, where these icky threads come into play. I can't even get this nut back off very easily by hand. This is after I cleaned this. The other big announcement that we're going to be waiting on here shortly.
Rajuan said, When does the radio/AC bezel launch? Greg's Garage 1 said, super interested in one.
They will be launching very soon. So last week we were working on fine-tuning the print settings for that. It was looking a little rough for a while. The first layer was kind of hard to nail through the printer, but we've got her almost dialed in. After that's ready, we have to finish the design for the piece that locks the actual vents themselves in place, because it's a little different than stock. And then they'll be ready to go. We also have new hardware, like new clips that are on the way in for this. Oh, that didn't work. We've already got one very ornery stud here. So yes, bezels are coming soon. I mentioned it earlier in the stream. This week got particularly busy. Stuff at home got in the way, getting projects done. It happens. But I plan to be back at it here shortly. Now. I do this often enough now. I should really buy like a stud puller kit of some kind. I think it'd come in handy. And B6Ts have so many studs. If there's any Miata people in chat, you would notice that we are using all the bolts on this head. Miatas only use the outside ones. They actually skip that extra bolt despite them being physically present in the casting. Kind of weird. Front-wheel drive superiority, I suppose. You know, front-wheel drive cars are making all the extra power. We need every bolt we can get. The other big thing that we are going to talk about here in a minute is our sensors. Because a ton of guys that are running the aftermarket ECU stuff, especially if you have a small nose crank like I do, you are probably familiar with the struggle it is to find a proper crank trigger, and I think we have that solved now. A solution I'm very proud of.
Said, SKR Sloth PM, I ordered a set of bushings. They took about a week in shipping. The bushings made a huge difference.
Yeah, if your bushings are bad, the new ones will feel like a completely new world in shifting. I don't think this does anything out. That does not want to budge. I think I actually have to tighten a tick more and then not come out all the way. Typical. Oh, I got to move. absurd. Come on. We got a half turn out so far. Maybe try a little heat. A little PB. I don't want to sit here and do this forever though. I do honestly want to show you guys this sweet crank and cam angle sensor kit I've been working so hard on. I guess if we only got a couple of them out tonight, that's fine too. I did them all. Sitting in some PB at the very least. Maybe quit busting my knuckles on the same nut 17 times. Like that. I think it's too stripped to do it now.
Said, how can I get into tearing down engines and rebuilding them?
Only way to do it is to do it. Pick an engine and tear it apart. Festiva engines, actually I would say, are not ideal to rebuild because the rebuild kits kind of suck and B3s aren't worth spending money on, but they are worth tearing apart. And if you go on the Festiva store website, you'll actually find the factory service manuals available for free, and they contain step-by-step guides how to tear down the entire engine. So I would recommend. Well, since I wanted this video to be more of a showcase for some new parts, and this stud has defeated me for the moment, I guess we'll pause and go back to talking about some new parts. I don't want to bore everybody too long watching me mess around over here. So, let's talk about our crank angle sensing. So when you're doing aftermarket ECU stuff, we talk about the stock setup for a second. Spin the engine around here. From the factory, your B6T only fires the injectors twice, basically. They're batch fire, which means injectors 1 and 2 or sorry, injectors 1 and 4 and 2 and 3 fire at the same time every time, because the engine does not know exactly where it is. The engine only kind of knows where it is. The only way the stock ECU knows where the engine is based on a sensor in the distributor, which for a B6T is a beastly chunky looking thing. I should have one for this engine. Maybe not. Anyway, the stock B6T distributor sits all the way out here. It's a huge, chunky, giant distributor. So since we have a distributor, by definition we have sequential spark. So the spark, each spark plug only fires when it needs to. 1, 3, 4, 2, in that order, over and over. The injectors fire in pairs. So injectors 1, 4, 2, 3, 1, 4, 2, 3. So every other cycle, it's just wasting an injector pulse, basically. When you're doing race car stuff, it's more ideal to have sequential injection. So that means you're firing only when you need to. 1, 3, 4, 2. Same with your spark plugs. 1, 3, 4, 2. Especially nice when you can do coil on plug, which is instead of having a distributor where each coil pack, basically, where each spark plug has its own coil. So instead of a coil going through one wire into a distributor that spreads out and distributes that spark, each one has its own. You can do individual timing, individual dwell and stuff, all sorts of fancy stuff with your ECU. For an engine to do that though, you have to have 2 speed sensors. You have to know your cam speed or cam position and your crank position, versus the factory one only measuring the cam. If you have a large nose engine, you can typically do your own cheap sensor by running a aftermarket pulley on the front, which is the same thing that later Miatas use. We have teeth on that front pulley behind the belts, and then the later oil pumps for Miatas have a spot where you can bolt the sensor to that oil pump and read that gear. This is a small nose engine. I started building this long before I even planned to go aftermarket ECU, so none of that mattered to me. Now I'm going aftermarket ECU and it matters. So I have, with some help from other people and a mixture of parts, started designing a way to measure crank position from the flywheel. Because Kia Rios use a tone wheel on the flywheel to tell the engine where the position is. That looks something like this. So here we have a flywheel for a Kia Rio. You can see on one side the teeth on the ring gear where the starter engages, but on the other side you have this wheel with these big fat teeth, and then one spot where there are teeth missing. And that's how these crank triggers work. It reads teeth, and then when it sees a missing spot, it knows that we're at that exact point in the rotation. By knowing where this is and knowing where your cam is, it knows exactly where your engine is in sequence. Very cool. To make a long story short, so I don't bore you guys too much, I have designed a kit that will turn your factory G series transmission, gives it an OEM sensor to read that tone ring, and you can have the option of running this Rio flywheel or buy an optional tone ring that I'm making that fits your OEM flywheel, which is crazy. And these are available right now. I want to show it off on stream because the kits are now available to buy. You can go get this from the Festiva store right now. Check this out. We have one OEM Hyundai/Kia sensor. This is OE quality, straight from made in Korea / Japan, depending on what version you have. These are fantastic, good quality sensors. We include the plug for that. These are quick release style. So the factory Festiva plugs that you've seen like this are probably annoying because they have this clip. This one, quick release. You simply push that with your finger. Check this out, it locks in. Boom, solid click. If you need to take it off again, you just push that metal tab down and they pop back out. So we include the pins, we include the seals, it includes the connector, it includes the sensor, it includes this fancy little bracket here to mount the sensor, it includes both the bolts you need, it even includes this little handy piece of plastic here, which is a drill guide. So what you do to use this, and I'll go ahead and try zooming in again. I wonder if there's a hotkey I can set up to make the zoom faster. So down here we have a factory G-series transmission where that real flywheel or the modified stock flywheel fits perfectly. You take this little plastic bracket, you put it here on the edge. It only fits in one way, up and down. It sticks to this spot right here. There's 3 little holes. That's your drill guide. This hole, you drill it, you tap it in 6. Middle hole, drill out bigger, and that's where the sensor goes. Then, when those are drilled, the sensor bracket piece here fits perfectly on the transmission, like this. It's curved in both directions to be a perfectly flush, flat fit on the trans case. It even has metal inserts so it doesn't deform under any heat if you were to happen to get your trans dummy hot for some reason. This factory sensor clips in just like this, shows it down. It'll actually snap into position. Click, like that. I think this is the prototype one, so it isn't fully clear right now because the O-ring on this one is a tick thick. So that's the idea. That clicks down. There! Oh, that's a satisfying click. Love to hear that. Then you have your 2 bolt sizes that come in the kit. I'm going to unzoom now if I can. So look at that. We have perfect sensor holder. 1 long bolt, 1 short bolt included. Bolts that right to the trans and gives you full 60 minus 2 teeth to read off that crank, which is, for those who don't know, like very high resolution. Not so high as a manifold, but a lot higher than your standard 36 minus 1 or 36 minus 2. So that's incredible. So to follow that up, you might be wondering then, how are we going to sense our cam position? Especially because I don't want the giant bulky distributor on there. You could use a distributor sensor, the factory one, and just read that plus the cam, but it's just too big, and there's no need to have a bulk when you just need a simple tiny sensor. So I have designed this beautiful, super thin bracket with an OEM Bosch VR sensor. This bolts onto your engine perfectly along with a small chunk of metal that's included to act as a trigger. That small little trigger piece of metal goes on the tip of your cam. Press fits in with the option to weld it in if the press fit concerns you. That bolts on, and now you have OEM grade sensor, OEM grade bracket. These are fully CNC'd aluminum. They use the factory O-ring, so they're still sealed with the OEM ring, just like it's from the factory. Bolts into place, and now you have a +1 cam reference that sticks out of your entire engine only about 20 millimeters or so, which enables me to run a super compact intake tube for my side feed intake that we talked about on previous streams. That's this guy right here, a reimagining of the OEM JDM intake with 60 millimeter drive-by-wire throttle body that sits here like so. So now we can run our intake tube straight down across the trans without hitting any of the bulky distributor stuff that was in the way previously. Super exciting stuff. Speaking of which, I am making this intake available to all those who might be interested in buying it. It does require that you have the Euro/JDM intake manifold, but if you source one or need help sourcing one, I can help you with that. And then you can run this top piece. And we are now integrating this very nice piece of kit here. This is a factory Bosch IAT map sensor combo. So this will read boost pressure and your intake air temp on a single sensor. Super compact. It lives on the back of the manifold. I have to make a quick change to where it bolts in here. But this is going to be a sweet upgrade that I hadn't planned on originally, but just recently discovered and thought this would be a great addition to add to here. This also has factory ports, vacuum-wise, for the brake booster, and then for any other boost reference you might need to add, plus a couple extra small ones in case you need to run your fuel pressure regulator off of this. We are running the KA injection CNC fuel pressure regulator. This is a very nice piece of kit with a factory like OEM BMW Bosch 3.5 bar pressure regulator. So we will have our reference line coming off of our rail here. This is also the JDM fuel rail, so it's got dual feed. So you feed in both sides of the rail for super even fueling. That's all converted to AN line, AN6, because they're running AN line on the whole thing for E85. It's very cool, very nice stuff. It's been a long time development, and we are finally, like, we're there. We're at the point where we can run this stuff. So that's like the big overview. I've told some people so far, like in chats, like, hey, if you're looking for cool stuff, don't buy anything just yet for B6T because we're working on it. That's the sort of stuff we're working on. I've got cam sensing stuff taken care of, crankside sensors taken care of, full custom manifolds to run T25 upgrade turbos coming out soon, and they're going to be like affordable. We're not talking $1,000 parts here. We're talking stuff that you can really afford and buy and use, which is what's super exciting for me. These manifolds that I'm having made actually cost less than the manifolds cost. The stock ones cost new from Mazda. That's the sort of parts we're looking at here. Along with a lot of guides on how to do all the stuff. So all these parts are coming with guides on how to install them, how to run them, what kind of turbos you can bolt to it. A lot of stuff we already talked about in this chat or in this stream are going to be available in like actual guide videos. Very excited for some of the stuff coming out.
Dealer said, very thoughtful.
Thank you. It's means a lot coming from the man himself over here. But yeah, I'm super excited for this stuff. I hope some of you guys are too. And obviously that's still only like a third of the parts that we have over there on that table. There's still a lot more to come. But today, that sensor came in the mail and the new bolts for the manifold came in the mail. So I wanted to start getting that stuff out, test fitting it, making sure it all looks good. And so far, let me tell you, it looks good. These parts are going to work. Very excited for it. And now, I open up the chat. As always, if anybody has questions or wants to see anything else on this build that I haven't already gone over on today. I didn't plan on making this a super long video because A, obviously it's pretty late at night, and B, I don't want, I want to be able to link this to people later. Let's see if this is, hey, what's up with those parts you're talking about? I can just link them to this and they don't have to scroll through a 4-hour-long stream to find the interesting bits of content. Just like yesterday, we talked about our ECU and wiring stuff. We didn't do like the entire harness overview. It was more like a quicker video that I want to be able to show you guys what's going on. But I'm always here, happy to answer questions and talk to you guys through the build. It's some other cool stuff we have coming. There are other parts not related to this that are coming to the store. For those of you that are still here and listening, we are still working on getting mud flaps done. We are actually working on getting full, like, brand new silicone radiator hoses made, both for Capri and for stock Festiva. We might even be looking at making custom radiator hoses for the swap, so literally the perfect fit for this setup. We are actually looking at getting custom radiators made, like bolt-in style B6T swap radiators that are fully aluminum, dual core, filler necks like placed up and out of the way so you can fill the rad without any weird modifications to the body. So a very trick part there that we're working on getting. And we are working on getting 4100 rear drums made. So for those of you looking at the Aspire swap, I'm actually looking at getting brand new Rio front brakes, like full hubs made, ready to order, and full brand new Festiva hubs built, ready to order. And then to go along with that, instead of having to source Aspire rear drums, which are honestly a bit too big for us, I am looking at having brand new molds made to have cast 4100 factory drums in the rear. So like 4100 conversion is that easy. You unbolt your old drum, you bolt a new drum on, and boom, you're 4100. Super excited for that.
Gobbler said, does the stock paired injector setup waste fuel? Will the new system improve mileage?
It wastes a little bit, so like you do lose, you have some inefficiency there since you're not, it's not wasting it on an exhaust stroke, but you are not calculating fuel as well because you're basically trying to inject half per cycle. In the stock Festiva, and I think the stock B6T ECU actually just doesn't even do like injector control past 5,000 RPM. Once you pass 5,000, you're just kind of dumping raw fuel at like max injector duty cycle, which is definitely a waste of fuel. So yes, in a way, you could definitely have better mileage with sequential injection. Whether or not you will, probably not in this case, because our goal is more power. So you definitely, I will not be making better mileage at 220 horsepower compared to a stock B6T at 130. If you wanted to tune it that way though, yes, you could. This opens up way more tuning options. You can do a much better lean cruising AFR ratio, AFR. You can do a much better lean cruise. You could also have a much better control over your injector cycle when they're not paired. I don't know that I'd spend the money though on a stock engine for mileage reasons. I don't think, even how cheap the setup is, like Speedomino itself is very cheap, and the stuff I'm building here would be pretty cheap. That being said, this sensor is only going to fit dual overhead cam heads. It will not fit a single cam head. The bolt spacing is different. And B, even as cheap as this stuff is, I don't think you'd ever recoup your money. You'd have to do a lot of driving. It'd be a very minimal fuel mileage increase. This build's also going to be doing E85, so that kind of an entire wash for mileage and costs. E85 is a bit cheaper, but you have to inject 85% more E85, which is why we're running such big injectors. I mentioned earlier I got a 3.5 bar fuel pressure regulator. Factory is 3. I didn't want to go all the way to 4. So 3.5 bar. That's 44, 45 something-ish PSI over the stock 38. And we are running 630cc injectors. The factory B6T injector is 300, and we're hitting 630, which is crazy. Like, that's already a ton of fuel. The reason we're doing that is to A, have that overhead, because we don't want to have to run 100% duty cycle on injector, and B, running E85. So we probably will need to use like 500cc of our capable 630. And they're affordable. We're using like OEM takeoff Ford GT500 injectors, which are like fancy Bosch EV14 spray patterns, like proper. They're the right size for this engine. Physically, like the height wise, they fit on the stock rail quite nicely. So a lot of it's just you're fine tuning your ability to truly control the engine. You have a lot more control. You're not just guessing like random injection cycles on a non-power stroke that you can't tune around. Speaking of tuning, we do have our O2 controller now. So a lot of you have seen, especially if you watched the video earlier about talking about the ECU stuff, we have our wideband controller now. So instead of running a wideband gauge, the wideband sensor, we actually just have the sensor and a controller with no gauge that outputs the wideband signal to the ECU into the custom gauges we made. So we are tucking that up into the dash. That's an Innovate wideband sensor and controller kit. That's going to enable us to be able to do that tuning stuff. Same for the methanol injection kit. We are doing the meth injection, and the pump, we are going to tie it into the factory washer tank, because on an EFI car that's buried way down under the fender by the tire, so you don't see the tank at all. So it's basically a very stealthy install to use the factory tank in our case, since it's already hidden. I just have to make the inlet filling tube in the engine bay a little stealthier, make it nice and clean looking compared to how the stock ones will, the body kind of gross looking. And we had to figure out our pump mounting system. Ideally the pump should be at or below the level of the washer tank. That's already very low, and this car is going to ride low to the ground. I don't want the pump too in the way of damage, so we're going to figure out a nice stealthy place to mount it, wire it, and have like a nice beefy bracket made for it so I can protect it if I hit a big rock or something along those lines. Not like that would ever happen to this car. What else we gotta do? We gotta do a lot. There's a lot still to this build. I keep the camera's always looking over here at this fancy engine. It's like, oh, look how clean the engine's already built. Yeah, but this engine's been built for 6 years. It's been sitting on this engine stand in this exact condition for 6 years now, waiting for this to happen. So there's still a lot to do. But everything we go through now and plan ahead and do one small thing at a time. So like I said earlier today, I wanted to come out here and pull these old studs out, get new studs in. This is exactly what I thought would happen. Some of these are stuck and they're half stripped out. It's not easy to pull these stupid things out. So that is, now it's all an entire whole project, just getting the studs switched over. So it's a good thing we're doing that now and not getting stuck trying to do that later. Our brackets. Save the wiring stuff. We'll go up ahead and do our wiring diagrams now. That way we can see any potential problems digitally, fix them digitally, and then know ahead of time what sort of stuff to run into when we go to actually build the harness. Same for connectors and stuff. Like I just said, we're switching over that sweet new MAP IAT combo sensor, which means the wiring is different than how it was going to be previously. So I need to factor that in. So I had to go find I had to buy the connector and buy the pins for that new sensor, and then wire those in the diagram, and then make sure I have to wire that in. Like I mentioned earlier, the cam sensor, the VR sensors technically require shielded wire to work, not properly, but better, keep interference out of the way. So now I have to make sure that we're running shielded wire in our diagrams and physically in the car to that sensor. It can't just be random wires like everything else is. There's a lot of stuff like that that you have to keep in mind when you're building stuff from the ground up and not using the stock stuff. Oh, this heater in the garage and this insulation is making this a very good place to be chilling right now, talking about this stuff. It is nice and warm in here, let me tell you. Oh, and I'm pretty sure we are officially going to be doing the 6-speed swap on this car. World's first 6-speed G Series Festiva right here. I didn't want to use my 6-speed. I had the one that we talked about on the transmission live stream a while back. I did not want to use that one on this car. I'm saving that for the Protege. And then Steven found that first one for me. I told him about it, and he happened to find one on Marketplace. Steven just found another one on Marketplace for a screaming deal not too far from here. So we're literally going to go pick that up on Saturday. So I will have 2 6-speeds, which means one of them can go into this car. I did all the math, and I decided that it's totally doable on this car.
Garage 1 said, how many Festivas do you currently own?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Currently own 7. 5 of them are here at my house. 1 is a rally car that stays at Tom's house currently, and 1 is a winter car that Stephen is borrowing. Actually, speaking of the transmission stuff, the reason I mentioned I did all the math to see if it would work out, I actually made an entire Excel sheet so that anybody else wanting to do a similar swap can do the math and figure out what transmission they want. I felt pretty good about that little project.
Cobbler said, 7 bush league.
Well, I mean, there were 10, but I didn't count around space. So check this out. I made this sweet Excel sheet a couple weeks ago, or last week, because I was talking about the 6-speed and all the transmission ratios. So I decided to make a whole Excel with like every known transmission ratio for Mazda front-wheel drive transmissions. And then I decided I'd get crazy and do a bunch of math and stuff and a bunch of calculations and actually tell you the maximum speed, your velocity max, per gear, per transmission, per ratio, depending on what RPM you want to run and your tire size. So if I go in here real quick, I can actually type in my tire size, 165, 50, 15, and I'm probably going to put my limiter at around 7,100 RPM. Because we're tuning everything up. And now if I go down here to this chart and I look at the G6 6-speed, you can see that in first gear I'll hit 30, second gear we can hit 56 miles an hour, third 78, fourth 100.4, fifth gear 123, and sixth gear 152 max, which is excellent news. I was worried about using the 6-speed because second gear doesn't quite get you to 60. You can see every other transmission would definitely hit, would hit 60 in second, except for this one. But then you got to realize that's the whole point of a 6-speed. It's a
13 Sloppy TM said, can you post this spreadsheet of the ratios on the website?
At some point I will. Right now it is already posted to like the Research and Development Festiva group, which is like a small group just for initial research for stuff like this. The problem is if I post it just to the page, the only way to make the math part work is if I make it so that anyone can edit it. And that means if I post it in the main group, anyone can come just here and literally delete the whole thing and just mess with it. Thankfully our community is pretty sweet, and I don't think we have too many trolls that would actually do that. But I want to make a different copy and make a version that only has these cells editable. That way people can't just come in here and start deleting stuff. But yes, this will be available on the main page once I get the rest of the stuff figured out and add a couple more transmissions that I was missing from the first version. But yeah, that's the whole point of the 6-speed. It's a close ratio box. It's not a 5+1. It's a close ratio 6-speed. 5th gear is equal to 6th gear on a 6-speed versus a 5-speed. So it makes sense then that my Vmax would be smaller. That's the whole point. I want to shift more because shifting is fun. So yeah, there you go. I did some math. I made that available, or I'm making that available. But yeah, after doing the math, I decided a 6-speed in Festiva, totally doable, totally awesome. We're gonna make it happen. We're gonna have the first Festiva with a 6-speed transmission or a 6-speed G series. I think there's been a couple swaps where people have done like Toyota engine plus Toyota Trans in the Philippines that had a 6-speed. That's a whole different ball game. A whole bunch of custom axles and stuff. Yada yada. All right, we officially hit the hour mark for the stream. So, I know there's a pretty big delay right now because we are streaming in 4K. For those of you with eyes, you're gonna have to tell the difference. So there's a big delay, so I'll give it some more time. But if anybody else has any questions, I'd love to answer them. Otherwise, that's probably the end of the stream. And I guess I'll be back out here pretty soon with the welder to take a couple of these other studs out. I do want to try again just by hand on 2 or 3 of the studs that I didn't get yet.
YouTube said, thanks Will, great stream.
Thank you, and thank you for tuning in. Good to see you on here, Eric, and hopefully soon to see you in person, my good friend. Oh, that is a crunchy, nasty stud right there. Good grief.
Doublet said, great job. 720p route. See ya. Randy Healer said, have a great night, waving hand.
Thank you, thank you. 720p. How are you going to see the bald spot in my head? 720p. Boom! Stud came right out that time. Love to see it. Alright, the rest of the stream will be last minute questions and answers and stud removal. So, if all you came here was for information about all the cool new parts we're making, that's it. We're done. Thank you so much for joining us. For anybody else that wants to help me keep the watch hours up and watch me pull studs, thanks for joining me and keeping the watch hours going. We are really close to getting paid by YouTube. And all you guys gotta do is watch. It's incredible. You guys simply hang out, watch the stream, I get paid. You guys don't have to buy anything. because YouTube already puts ads on my content without me asking them to. I don't get to choose that. They do that because they want money. And I'm close to getting a cut of that. Thanks to all of you guys being here. I would also super recommend checking out previous streams. If you go to the channel and go under the section where it says live, you can see all the past streams we've ever done. And there's a ton of great info in those past streams, especially for this build. V2 is going to be primarily a stream-based build. We'll be editing the content later to make it short form. For those who might want to see that, that's like a while away before I get that point. Yeah, streams are free, they're simple, they're not guide videos, and they require me to do no editing, which is fantastic. And we get to interact. You guys get a chat in here, it reads me the comments, you get to hear yourself live on stream, kind of. How cool is that? Annoying one. Nope, now I'm stuck. Stuck and stripped. Well, that means it's time for the welder later. Alright, 10 p.m. on the dot. I'm calling it. As always, dress this. Ta-da. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. See ya!